Welcome to the Weekly Juice Podcast, where we discuss all things real estate, personal finance, investing, entrepreneurship, and the many ways to achieve financial independence. We interview accomplished investors and entrepreneurs with the goal that their stories inspire you to take control of your financial future. Here to get your creative juices flowing, while also documenting their own personal investing journeys, are your hosts, Corey Jacobson and Ryan Bevilacqua.
Welcome back to the Weekly Juice. As always, it's your boys Ryan and Corey here with another episode. Today we had on special guest Derek Peterson. He's the founder of Adapt Media. He's a real estate investor and ultramarathoner that has completed multiple Ironmans. I think Derek's story is one of the best we've ever heard on the show. He's been through a lot of adversity on the medical side, but also in his personal life and his business life. He's talked about having to strip away business partners that weren't the right fit for him. He's also talked about having to uplift himself. He's going from an ultramarathoner to not being able to walk and navigating that. And then on the family side, he one day woke up in his 8,000 square foot home with 4-car garage, big, massive pool. And from outside looking in, he was perfect on paper. He was sitting at the
in his movie theater,
with 20 seats in there watching a movie, and looked around and realized he was miserable. And he looked like he had everything, but inside he had nothing.
This reminds me of a podcast I was listening to the other day with Alex Hormozy, and I've mentioned him a bunch on the show, but I just, he has some of the quotes that he says I really enjoy. And he said, if you were going to create a person and you were trying to make them tough, you probably wouldn't give them an easy life. Like, you probably wouldn't give them everything if you were trying to make them into something successful. And Derek is that guy. Like, he's been through the point where he had 0% body fat and he was running an Ironmans, to then he couldn't even walk because his joints were hurting so bad. And he had to make the theme of the episode is the change that he had to make. He had to make a change in his health. He had to make a change in his business. He had to make a change in his entire life. So as we went through the process of building the website with Derek, we learned about all his connections in the real estate space. And he's actually been co-GP, LP. He's built a real estate business himself because his business of creating websites for people started out by doing it for other real estate investors. And that's why we were like, oh, we can see kind of some similarities in our games and in our businesses.
Yeah, essentially he would create the marketing plan and the website for real estate investors and help them raise capital, help bring other people in on deals, showcase their deals. And in turn, he started learning a lot about the different nuances and different lanes he could go in real estate. And he saw a lot of other people build generational wealth with real estate. And he decided, he's like, one of the people he built the website for, he sat down with them. He's like, how can I get in the game? And the guys basically brought to him, he's like, look at your skill sets. You're amazing at marketing. You know how to build websites. There's a lot of people in a lot of different fields that need that. Pick the one that you want to go in, and someone will eventually bring you into their team and hire you. So exactly that's what happened within one of the real estate teams. He actually met a gentleman named Bala Krishnan, and I hope I pronounced the name properly. But essentially, Bala he's an engineer by trade, but also a tech investor who moved out to Silicon Valley. He built this app called Peel, and essentially
multi-million-dollar.
He sold it for $multi-million, but also, before he even sold the company, he had reached financial independence through real estate. So he and Derek hit it off right away, and they built a partnership.
And then that leads us to the partnership that Ryan and I have decided to get into with Derek. And I just want everyone to listen to the show. There's a really cool model that Derek introduced to us about how to multiply your wealth through real estate. And we can leave it at that because we could talk about this for hours. And we did. It's a long episode, but stick around, hear about the opportunity. And we're just really excited to be able to potentially bring it to people who are listening.
Yes. It's called 10 Years to Retirement, and it's essentially a roadmap through real estate to get you to an end goal of potentially retiring through this platform. So don't want to tease it too much. I think Derek can explain it much better than we can right off the bat. And I think you're really, really going to enjoy Derek's story and who he is and the adversity he's overcome. So without further ado, let's bring him in. Let's do it. When you have investment properties and tenants, you need a good system in place for collecting rent to make it easy as possible. And RentRedi can help you with everything. When you sign up for RentRedi, you can start adding your properties, inviting tenants, and creating charges. You can even set up automatic rent reminders and create auto late fees as well. For tenants, they can pay via ACH, card, or even cash using RentRedi's web and mobile apps. They can also use an automatic payment setup and sign up for rent reporting so they get rewarded for paying rent on time. RentReady saves you time and hassle by automating rent collection, and you can manage everything from one dashboard. For our Weekly Juice listeners, RentReady's given us a special 50% off for any RentReady plan using our code WeeklyJuice at rentready.com. That's RentReady.com using the code WeeklyJuice. That's WeeklyJuice to save 50% off any RentReady plan. Derek, officially welcome to the show. Corey and I are so excited to have you on here, man. It's been a long time coming, and we're excited to share your story with our audience.
Awesome, man. Appreciate you guys. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. So take us through your story of entrepreneurship, who you are, where you're from, and then kind of how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, man, it's funny. I get asked this question a lot, and I've sort of taken some time to dissect, like, how does one become an entrepreneur, right? I think some people inherently are born with a certain attributes inside of them. I think you guys are much like this, where you have this instilled inside of you. Some of it comes later in life, right? Just like, some people kind of take on sports and golf and things like that later in life. For me, actually, it's funny. I look back when I was a little kid, when I was 12 years old. My first entrepreneurial venture was this lawn mowing business. I lived in upstate New York, and I lived in this neighborhood. It was a nice neighborhood, right? And they had, I don't know, probably about 75 homes in there. And this is going back a while, right? Like I'm not that young. So when we got these directories in our neighborhood that actually had all the phone numbers before cell phones of all the neighbors in the neighborhood. I noticed that they all were using professional lawn service companies. And the quote seemed outrageous. So I said, you know what, I'm gonna cold call these fools, and I'm gonna see if I can get them, just come up with the local guy in the neighborhood will come do it at half the price of what you're, being charged by your current vendor. So I started making phone calls in February while there's still snow on the ground. I said, hey, can I come out in the spring, give you a quote? I got a lot of bites. About almost half the neighborhood said yes. So then, once the snow melted, I could actually see the grass. I walked around because I didn't have a car. I was like 12, and I knocked on their door and I said, hey, I mow your lawn. I didn't have a lawnmower. I didn't have a weed whacker, but I knew how to mow grass because my dad made me mow the grass at home. And I landed like 25 yards, right? Which for a kid that's 12 years old, that was actually a little bit overwhelming. But the nice part was a lot of the houses are right next to each other, and they were sizable yards. Some of them were an acre, 3/4 of an acre. And I asked my dad, I said, hey, I got a couple of lawns in the neighborhood. Can I borrow a lawnmower? He didn't realize I had like 25 and I was just going to be murdering the machinery. And so began my entrepreneurial venture. So for the next 4 years in that neighborhood, I was the lawn mowing king. It sort of rolled over into other jobs like putting mulch down, weeding, window washing, house sitting, plant sitting. But as I started to get into my teen years, where I became a little more social, started having girlfriends and things like that, I realized I needed a little bit more help. So I started hiring other neighborhood kids that were 12 when I was about 16 and 17 years old. I was like, I got a great idea. What if I charged $8 an hour for the labor and then only gave them $5? I'd make $3 an hour. And it was like this novel concept that no one had ever thought of. And it was just my idea. So I had all these neighborhood kids with zero management experience. And I ended up being a nightmare because I didn't understand how to manage them and they weren't doing a good job with all the work. But to make a long story short, I built this lawn mowing empire as my first venture when I was younger, to only fall flat in its face when I went to my freshman year in college. So in August, I exited. I went off to college. And I just stopped. I didn't tell any of the neighbors. I didn't send a letter. I didn't have the wherewithal at that time or that age to say, hey, I'm going to college. I can't mow your lawn. It's about 2 weeks in, my phone rings at school. It's my mom. She's like, dude, you ghosted all these people. You didn't tell them you're going to college. I was like, oh my gosh, you're right. I didn't. So needless to say, I was working at the mall next summer when I came home from college, but that was kind of my first stardom into the space, and kind of got me, really thinking about a life of entrepreneurship. After graduating college, I was like, you know what? I need to do the corporate thing for a while. So I worked for larger corporations, kind of wore the corporate hats, manager, sales trainer, sales rep, all those things for ADP, sold payroll services, ran a payroll office for a number of years. Then I transitioned into medical device sales. So I did medical device sales for a few different companies, a couple startups and a couple big ones. And it was about the age of, I think it was my like 34, maybe my mid 30s. I said, you know what? I'm done with this. I'm done wearing the corporate hat, playing the corporate game, being sort of shackled by, what I'm being told what I need to do, when I can take vacation, things like that. And a little aggravated with some of the folks in management. So I said, I'm going to try my own thing and open my own medical distribution business. Had the experience, had the relationships, had the network. And that's what I did. I went out and I actually started my first medical distribution business as my first true real entrepreneurial venture after exiting the corporate world.
Love it. So you wear a lot of hats now. You do your own thing on a lot of different spheres, but media company, you're super big into health and wellness. I'm curious to transition in real estate, forgot to mention that. So you have a bunch of different facets going on here. I'm curious how the transition happened from the medical device, what you learned, maybe the transfer of that into the new ventures that you're doing now, and what inspired you to go into different business ventures.
Yeah. So it typically starts like with most entrepreneurs, you start with one, right? And the thing that I like, what's interesting about being an entrepreneur is when I worked in corporate America, I worked a lot less hard, right? You're on someone else's time, you would screw off on their time. And if you had, depending on the job that I held, I would made really good money. So I had extra time. So what I did was I kind of created what a lot of people call today a side hustle, right? So that was the first thing that I started a side hustle. That was that medical distribution business. So I was running that concomitantly while I was still in OR medical device sales and management. And it wasn't competing, right? There were two different sort of industries. There was a different call points. And I started to make some money. And I was like, wow, this is pretty cool. I can actually do this. And it started to get as it started to progress more and more and more, I started to realize the freedom that I had and the potential that I had in my fingertips. But I was really nervous about cutting the cord, right? I had benefits. I had a company car. I had security. And it wasn't until my father told me, when I had this conversation with him about having benefits in a car and security, he said, see, stop me on the word security. He goes, you think you have security working for somebody else? He goes, you have no security because you're replaceable. At a snap of a fingers, they can fire you, lay you off. But when you work for yourself and your own boss, the only person who's firing you is you. So you're going to work a lot harder. And he always worked in corporate America, but he knew a lot of folks that were entrepreneurs. And he said, you work for yourself. You can't fire yourself, but you're going to work a lot harder. So I made that transition. One day I said, go ahead. I cut bait on the corporate job. That was not a difficult call, actually. I thought it was going to be harder. It actually wasn't hard at all. And I never looked back, I'll be honest. And to my previous point of not working that hard, making pretty good money in corporate America after I was established, I work significantly harder now, crazy hours, just relentless workload, and I do very well, but not how I did before, commensurate with the amount of work that I was putting in. Right. So if I, broke it down to like an hourly wage, but I wouldn't trade it for a world. And the reason is I have total freedom and autonomy to sort of carve the outcome that I want. In the beginning, guys, I chased money. I'm being honest, just like most entrepreneurs. I was like, hey, I'm going to open a medical distribution business because I just want to make money. And I thought, hey, I got relationships. Let's just go make that money. And I did. I did that over the course of several years, about five, six years. Started 2 companies in the medical distribution business. The first one with my partners was my first real true entrepreneurial venture, right? Let's forget about the lawn mowing business. That was my first go at it. I didn't really know what I was doing, but we had a product where we made a lot of money in a very short period of time. So we felt like we were awesome entrepreneurs, right? When you're making money and everything's cranking, you're like, man, I'm awesome. I'm good at this. The reality is I didn't know squat. Yeah, I sucked, right? And the partners I chose, some may be listening, but that's okay. They weren't the right partners either, right? And I learned that through that experience that, choosing what you're going to do as your entrepreneurial venture needs to be in line with who you are and who you want to become. And it can't just be about money. and choosing who you do it with will also dictate who you become in that journey. Because it's, a lot of us see sort of the end point of where we're trying to get with our business or a goal, but it's in where you are today. But the distance between those two points is where all the work is. That's where the life is. That's where the magic is. That's where the growth is. And if you don't enjoy that part, don't do it.
Well, I just think it's interesting what you said about the chasing the money. And I've realized from talking to you and just other entrepreneurs and people who are older than us, who are in our early 30s, just people who are in their 40s and 50s, like there is this innate emptiness that comes from chasing money that you can only feel once you have enough money to feel it. But it's consistent with pretty much every person I talk to. It's like this thing that they're like, you want to chase the money, and it's because you have the scarcity of resources, right? And you want the money because you want to feel secure. But then if it's only about that, the lack of enjoyment of what you do every day, it's like your time is spent chasing something that just forever moves further away, right? And I don't know if you felt that when you were chasing money, but I've learned about it even just in like the small ventures that we've done. It's like, if I'm not doing things with a smile or like enjoying the journey along the way, like it's becoming more and more apparent that there will never be a time where I'm like 100% content. So is that something that you felt along your path?
Oh gosh. Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that. That's a great segue. So after about 6 years in that space, I reached that pinnacle, right? Where I'd made multiple millions of dollars. I'd moved from New York down to Charlotte, North Carolina, and bought a new place, bought a new house, right? It was an 8,600 square foot house. I'm not saying this to boast, but to prove a point. 4-car garage, had a $150,000 convertible in the garage. I had a $250,000 pool with a water slide, waterfalls, and a grotto and all that. And from somebody from the outside looking in, I was also incredibly, fit at that time. I was just finished like my 5th Ironman triathlon. So here's a guy that from the outside looking in, you're like, oh, he's crazy fit. His family's great. He's got this business, car, house, smile on his face. And I was just like, I had this incessant need to just keep doing, and it was never enough, and do more and do more and chase and chase and chase. And while that's a good characteristic, because it continues to drive you forward, I was chasing the wrong things, right? At the expense of selling my soul to the devil, so to speak, right? I was in business with people that weren't good people, right? My relationship at home wasn't as good as it could have been with my spouse. The relationship with my kids was suffering because I was so focused on just winning, and it was eroding other things in my life. But again, from a tangible asset perspective, I had everything. I'll never forget the moment that I was sitting in my basement. I just finished the basement, and it had been this big project. I was so immersed in it. And we had this movie theater that had like 3 tiers, this like 130-inch TV screen. And I'm down there. There's like 20-something seats. I'm sitting there in the middle of all these seats by myself watching Breaking Bad, right? Somebody's like, oh, you watch Breaking Bad. It's a really good movie. So I was sitting there, I started watching it, and everything was finally done. And I finally took a breath, like, now I can sit down and enjoy the theater. And in that moment, I go, I'm freaking miserable. I'm like, I stopped for a minute and I looked around and I was like, I hate my life. Like, I'm not happy. I'm not happy with who I am. I'm not happy with, like, I'm never satisfied. I'm not happy with my relationship. I'm not happy I'm being a father. I'm like, I have all this money, but like, I don't care. None of this means crap. I'm miserable. And that's the ultimate failure, right? To reach what people would see on the outside as total success, but that inside you're just broken. And I didn't know at the time. I would later figure out why I felt that way. But in that moment, I made a decision to just change everything, rip the Band-Aid off and make a radical move, which was to, again, told my business partners, highly successful business, said, I'm done. I'm walking away. It's not worth it, right? You can have it. I didn't even ask for a buyout. Relationship that I had with my now ex, who I get along great with, I said, we're done as well. I said, because this just isn't going to work. And that was probably the most painful, dark time of my life, because I went from here to here. And when at a time when most people would think you're crazy for doing that, but it was the best thing that I did. It was because from that change, and what I can explain in a bit, how it catapulted me into a much better life, because of some of those changes and realizations that I made. But to your point, I had everything on paper, right? And I was freaking miserable.
Cool. So not cool.
Not cool.
Actually, the opposite. Cool story, but not, you're in this place now that you don't want to be. And I'm curious about the changes. I'm curious about the realization's awesome. What did you then focus on? Because I think that there's people that are listening that maybe haven't reached this pinnacle, right? But they might be driving themselves forward on their way to a place that you eventually realized, and they might be able to stop it before it happens, before you get to a place where you're miserable. And so you're not chasing money. What are the habits that you created, or what are the things that you did in your life to make the change? And then what did that change ultimately look like?
It's funny you keep mentioning the word change. So if you look at a lot of the companies that I have, they all are under the brand of Adapt, right? So I have Adapt Health, Adapt Media Agency, Adapt Wealth. So the word adapt, and if for those who have seen my logo, it's an A, but it's actually an A and a Y. And the A and the Y actually stands for Adapt You. So it was in that moment, I was like, I need to change, right? I suck, right? I need to get better. And sometimes people don't. Change is super important to me. It's like, to me, the only constant in life is change. And if you're not good at it, you're going to leave a tough life, right? But if you can intentionally put yourself into difficult and challenging situations, that can prepare you for the challenge that life is going to throw at you. So I decided at that moment, I said, I got to change, and then I got to become a master at change. I got to understand the process, dissect it, and then apply it to every aspect of my life. And I feel like that would elevate me to a level of happiness that I wanted. And so it was in that moment that I realized that I'd gone through life up until that point in my mid-30s, and I did what everyone had told me I was supposed to do. Go to college, right? Invest in your 401k, get married, have kids, get a dog, right? Get the white picket fence, do all those things that everyone else is doing, not because I wanted to do it. Maybe I did in the moment, but because that's what you're supposed to do. But I never stopped for a minute and got to know who I was, right? I was like, who's Derek? Like, who am I? Right? And actually look inside and realize who I was. And as a man, sometimes it's weird talking about this stuff about like loving yourself and all that. But I realized that everything you do in life, the whole purpose of everything we do, if you really break it down to the finer point at the end goal of why you do it, it's to feel, right? I eat spicy food because I want to feel a certain way, right? I watch a comedy because I want to laugh, right? I make money so maybe I can get a car when I was younger so I could attract a girl so I could feel that relationship, right? All those things come down to a feeling. Yeah, as guys, we typically suppress feelings. We don't show emotion. We keep shoving it down. And I was like, I read this book called The Mask of Masculinity by Lewis Howes, and it was like a bomb went off in my head. I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, that's it. That's me. That's why I do those things. So I started, to answer your question, the process of inner self exploration to try to understand who I was and the reason I acted the way I did. So I was drinking from a fire hose, Tony Robbins, Vishen Lakhani, you name any dude out there that he has, call it motivational talk, David Goggins, all that stuff. Constantly. I still do to this day consume that content because I needed to understand why I was the way I was. And it was so enlightening to become self-aware. And I think that's when you see a lot of people kind of go through midlife crisis, because that's essentially what I went through, right? Some people call it a midlife crisis. That's what it was. And then now I can see it from a mile away when I have friends or family that are going through it themselves. You're like, okay, yeah, I know what's going on right now. So becoming self-aware and learning how to love yourself early and becoming like in alignment with that is something that as we become entrepreneurs or go into the corporate world, whatever we're doing, it's so stinking important. Otherwise, one day you're going to wake up and you're going to start doing some dumb stuff, right? You're going to fill that gap in your heart with whatever it might be, alcohol, drugs, sex, shopping, you name it, right? And
To feel like you're saying, right?
there's a gap.
Yeah.
Right? There's a gap that you're like, I need to feel this love from drinking, women, whatever it is for you. And once you fill that gap with love for yourself, because you know who you are and you're self-aware, you don't need it anymore. Right. And it took me a little while to figure that out. And once I figured that out, that's when everything changed for me. That's when everything adapted for me. That's when I realized for my entrepreneurial ventures, I was going to go after things that were going to allow me to become a better version of myself, right? And to be able to serve other people, right? So I wasn't going after things that were focused on just making money. So I go out and buy more things to get that feeling, to fill that gap. My gap was filled with love for myself. And I was hoping to have a little extra to pour out to help other people feel that way and get those things. So since that moment of like total awful darkness, it's just been nothing but pure bliss ever since then. And all the businesses that I've gotten involved in are in alignment with that thesis.
Well, let's talk about those. First of all, actually, before we get into that, I just want to say thank you for the last, whatever it was, 15 minutes that you went into that. A lot of people don't share that. And as you mentioned, like as guys, and the masculinity effect comes in and you're like, you do suppress those things and you keep it. But there's a lot of things we think about on a daily basis. I'm just speaking as one guy to another, is like, I got to take care of my family. I got to make more money. I got to have balance between my health, wealth, and like me. Like, there's a couple of times we talked to people on the show. They like, so what do you like to do? What are your hobbies? And you like, the fact that there's even a question about that is an issue. It's like, what do I like to do? Are you kidding me? And so I think we have recently got into some of these conversations, right? We still have our W-2 jobs, but we've built over the last 4.5 years, a lot of different side businesses, silos, real estate, what have you. And there's a lot fired at you on a daily basis, not only at home with the family, but in your businesses and your job. You're like, how do I even have time to do this? Corey and I were talking pre-show that we have just like, we've over encumbered ourselves with things and we need to start stripping things off. And it's just a breath of fresh air to have a conversation with you. The interesting part is like, and I'm going to ask you this kind of as we lead forward in this conversation, but you do have your hands in a couple different lanes. And from a guy that feels over encumbered right now, it would be, we're looking for advice on, hey, as you navigated this for more happiness, how did you pick those things that align with you and your happiness? And then how did you decide to shave certain things off? And maybe in tying a bow on all this, like, how the hell do you balance all of these things? You mentioned you work harder than you ever have, but I'm not looking for your schedule by any means, but more so like, how do you give time to the right things at the right times? Because there's seasons of this stuff, right? A lot of things get higher importance depending on what gets thrown at you every day. We have deals thrown at us left and right. It's like, okay, immediately you got to flip on a dime and go after this one. So I know there was a lot, but maybe let's take it to all the different businesses you're in and talk to how you aligned yourself with the right things.
Yeah. So to answer the high level, one of the questions you asked, and then I'll dive into the businesses, how do you manage it all? That's still a question I'm trying to answer. If I'm being honest, I don't think anyone ever lands that plane, right? And if they do, that's the wrong mindset. You can always get better. You can always get sharper. You can always create better processes, bring on better people. And the second we sit back on our heels and our haunches, that's when we get passed by the competition. But the continual pursuit of better, which I know I mentioned before, sometimes it can be to a detriment, is also a great asset. And, so for me, it's just creating different systems and processes and then just increasing my value. Right. So the more I can learn, that's the one thing I know is I know nothing. Right. And in the day of information, like ignorance is a choice. Right. So we choose, like anything that anyone else learned, I know I can learn it because they learned it. Right. And now with these cell phones and computers, AI and all this other stuff, like it's so easy to be able to, carve out your time, learn something, increase your value, then be able to go deploy a business into that space. So, all the stuff that I'm into now, this has happened over a course of years. So when I first started and I had sort of that epiphany moment, call it that rebirth or whatever you want to label it, when I sort of came out of that that fog, I said to myself, I said, okay, I want to get into businesses doing things that I want to do, right? And I want to take what I like to do and I'm going to turn it into money. So the things that I like to do is I like to travel the world, love traveling. And I felt like I barely touched the surface. And I really want to take that to a next level. I'd like to go to every country, every continent. I want to see everything. So, and then I also want to be able to, work remotely from these different locations. I need to create a business that allows me to do that. And one thing I've always been good at was like sales, kind of marketing stuff. I have a marketing degree, although it was a zillion years ago. I was like, it's kind of a thing I like to do in my businesses. I enjoyed that aspect. So I'm going to start a marketing firm and I'm going to start a travel agency. I want to start those two businesses because those are things that if I immerse myself in them on the travel side, it's just going to give me an open doors and give me access to things that I would not normally have. And so my now wife, Amy, she runs that business. We started it together and she was actually a dental hygienist. And she was definitely a clock puncher, W2er. And it was really hard to get her to come more into this entrepreneurial mindset. Took me a little while to kind of work her there a little bit, but she finally kind of broke down and she ended up getting laid off from her dental job. And that was the best thing that ever happened because then she'd go full time into running that business. And that has allowed us to go to like, close to 40 different countries, over the last, 6 years or so. Then the marketing firm, I was like, if I can get really, really good at this, this will open doors for me to have this be sort of my secrets or my secret sauce or my skill set. So that'll give me, that'll be the gateway to other opportunities, right? So if I'm really good at marketing, there'll be other companies that are like, hey, Derek, why don't you partner with us and just do the marketing for us and have equity in this company? And that was the goal. That was the plan when I first started. And I figured I could do marketing for other businesses, screw up, on other businesses, learning the art of marketing. And, and then from there, eventually it'll become something that I'm really good at. So the one thing that's really helped me with being an entrepreneur is knowing that although I see this goal that's in the purview, that's way ahead, it's so distant, it's like you can't even imagine it. Just know that if I can just chip away at it every single day and just do a little bit every single day, just get 1% better, that delayed gratification, that's what Ironman triathlon taught me and a lot of other things, is that if I just chip away at it and I see the end goal, work my way backwards, I know I'll get there. So, I first started my marketing firm and the travel agency. We did it at the same time. I exited my medical distribution business with my partners, my second one. I said, hey guys, I'm done. Took a little buyout and I said, I'm going to go. And we're going on this 2-month around the world honeymoon, my wife and I. So we're going to go around. I want to completely circumvent the globe. Just go start one end, come around the whole other. And it seemed cool, right? And I'm going to start this marketing firm. So we left. I had 2 clients and no client in the marketing firm and no clients in the travel agency. And we rolled the dice and we went for it. And I can tell you many years later, both those businesses are really, really thriving, but we burnt our boats so we could sort of take the island by taking that risk.
Wow. Very cool. And so I really like the play too with the marketing agency, because for me, I'm a creative. Like I'm not really a massive numbers guy. I'll do it. I don't love it though. Right. And the creative just comes to me. I like to draw, like my brain works that way. So I see it, and you probably see it from half the conversations we've had in terms of the website and things like that. But with that, I think it's a genius move because it does parlay into a multitude of other businesses, right? You could go to the travel side, you go to real estate, you could go accounting, you go anywhere. Everyone needs a website. I think marketing and a digital resume is one of the most sought after things today because attention is a new currency, right? Like people have a front facing thing they need and they're like, well, I need this done at a decent cost at a high level, right? And so if you can be that answer, I think this day and age, it's a perfect fit. So kudos to you on that. I think it's really cool. And then it's what you like to do too, right? So you can, every venture you go into, that's your door opener, if you will.
Yep.
The question to you is, how does that parlay into real estate? I know for us, this is a real estate heavy focused show, and I love all the different ventures we have a bunch of different ventures, but real estate is really the niche that we've carved out, and a lot of people listening are. So I know you have a great experience in that too. Can you talk to how you parlayed that marketing maybe into real estate, or if it has no relation at all, that's cool too. I just want to know how you got there.
Yeah. So for real estate, it's a pretty funny story. When I left to go overseas on this 2-month trip. I was in Bali, Indonesia, in a like thatched hut with very like dial-up Wi-Fi type of signal. And they have a, over there, that's a 12-hour time difference. So I had built a website for a buddy of mine. Remember I mentioned I had 2 clients? One fired me when he knew I was going on a 2-month honeymoon. He was kind of pissed off about it. So I was like, oh, sorry. So I only had 1 client. And that 1 client, I put my name at the bottom of his website. And it happened to be a real estate company. It's called Reliant Real Estate Investments. And the only reason I got that as my only client is because I was the guy who was in charge of the one of the guys in charge of the company. I was his first boss out of college. So we were just buddies, right? So he gave me the opportunity. At the bottom of the website, I wrote website proudly built by Adapt Media Agency, right? And I got a phone call from somebody by the name of Whitney Sewell at LifeBridge Capital. Now, for those who know who Whitney is, he's a massive name in the industry, big podcast, big in the space, right? And Whitney called me and said, hey, I really like what you did for Reliant. Now, I built that site. I don't build any of them now. We built over 1,000 websites since then. But at that time, I'd built one. And so Whitney was like, hey, can you build mine? I was like, sure. And I remember sitting in this thatch hut. I was like, I don't know what to charge, right? I was like, what do I charge for a website? It's like, we throw a big number out there. At the time, it was like $5,000, right? Which we charge more now.
It's way too low, right?
Yeah, way too low. But at the time, I was like, that seems like an obscene amount of money. So I threw it out there and he was like, yeah, sure. Sounds good. So he built his website and I put the same thing at the bottom of his website. So what happened was I went on his podcast and my phone started to ring. When I got back from this around the world trip, my phone started ringing. They're like, hey, I saw you did Whitney's website. And I put it at the bottom of the next client and the next client. And it grew and it grew and it grew. And next thing you know, while I was doing a lot of websites across a variety of different brands, in marketing across a variety of different brands, I started to create a specialty in real estate. As I got to know these folks and to know the business, I was an LP investor, but I never understood really how it worked. And I met these 2 dudes who were clients of mine, Greg and Tim Lyons at Cityside Capital. And I went to Virginia to shoot video with them. And I was like, guys, I was like, I really like what you're doing here. I was like, I've had, I don't know, maybe 20 clients now in this space. I want to get into the space. Like, how do I get in the space? And they're like, well, what you should do is you've done this branding work for a lot of folks. Just continue to focus just on this. And someday someone will ask you to be part of their business, right? They'll ask you to be an equity owner in the business, and your secret sauce you bring to the table is the marketing. I was like, oh yeah, that's kind of why I started this whole marketing firm in the first place. So I thought about it. I put all my efforts around that, manifested it, whatever you want to call it, and it happened. So I started my first company in the real estate space, was called Adapt Wealth. We were a capital raising company. So we raised capital for other reputable sponsors and operators. We raised about $30 million over the course of, I think it was about 3 years. And that really sunk my teeth into the real estate space. All the while in those 3 years, brought on hundreds of more clients in the real estate space, listening to podcasts, understanding underwriting. So every day, like I said, just get 1% every day. I kept chipping away and going deeper and deeper and deeper into the industry, started investing more as an LP until I had the opportunity to meet Bala at 10Y, who you guys know. And over a year ago, met Bala as again, another opportunity as a marketing firm to provide services as a vendor. And Bala and I hit it off. I mean, we hit it off like we were 2 long lost brothers. And that's really where this new partnership was born. He was looking to create this company. I was one of the first people that he brought in, and we decided to kind of go build this thing together over at 10Y. So I shifted from capital raiser to sponsor operator and helped Bala craft the vision of 10Y as it stands today. So that, all started in a thatch hut in Bali with one website and one client. And then here I am today, sitting in a completely different place than I was not too many years ago.
From Bali to Bala, only a letter change, but monumental. That's awesome, man.
Well, it's amazing the dots that you connected, and you didn't know that you were going to connect them. Like, just the fact that you started building websites for real estate entrepreneurs, right? There's no better way, and I've said this on shows before, there's no better way to get in with somebody than to provide a service for that person that you're looking to get in with, right? You just happen to be the website person. It could be a CPA, it could be a property manager, it could be a bookkeeper. It doesn't, if you want to go provide a service that that person needs, then you'll learn inevitably about their business. And you did just that, whether you knew it or not. That's what happened. So I really want to talk about 10Y because Ryan and I formed a partnership with you, and we kind of, after it's the same thing that happened, right? You build a website for us. We're real estate entrepreneurs. We've raised capital. We're general partners and LPs. We're in like a couple stages behind where you are. We met and we talked to you. We've met Bala, and we've learned about this 10Y model. That's exciting. Tell us about the high level of this and why it made so much sense for you. And then, Ryan and I can talk about why we feel the same way.
Yeah. So sitting in the seat that I sit in, and that we've grown to be the largest marketing firm that helps capital raisers, real estate syndicators build their brands, right? In all aspects of the brands, podcasting, websites, all that stuff. And I get an opportunity to meet with a lot of people. I've seen every asset class. I've seen every niche. I've seen every fund structure, and I've learned about them along the way. I've also had the opportunity to meet the ilk of people, right? So guys like you, like I had an opportunity to meet you, and we had a gut feel when we met, right? And early on, I was like, hey, I want to take our relationship past what we have as a typical vendor relationship, because there's something about you guys that I think we would work well together and build business well together. And so just sitting in that seat and having access to that information, I feel blessed, right? And when I met with Bala and he explained to me the investment methodology and thesis behind 10Y, it was like another one was like, boom, moments in my head. Again, granted, I've seen everything. I've seen the Burr method, the cash flow method. I've seen them all. In the small, simple nuance and change in the 10Y methodology, which, by the way, 10Y stands for 10 years to retirement. That was actually our first call. Bala and I were meeting, and he was actually going to call it something else. And I was like, no, you need to call this company 10 years to retirement. And I think that's where the love affair together began. That's where we were like, yes, we need to do this together. It's such a profound small difference in what's being done at 10Y, but it makes all the difference. So effectively what the methodology is, and I'll just kind of give it a very high level glazing of what it is, a lot of folks that invest in real estate, people invest for different reasons, but some people invest for just cash flow. They want passive income so they can go out and maybe work a little bit less. But a lot of people want total freedom and autonomy, right? They just don't want to work. They want to live life on their own terms, do what they want to do when they want to do it. I mean, who doesn't want that? So with the traditional real estate model, it can be challenging over time to be able to create the cash flow that you need by investing in deal after deal after deal. You have to put your money into a lot of different buckets, hope they all go really well, to take that cash on cash yield back into your pockets and be able to, say bye-bye to your full-time job. And the focus is on cash flow in the beginning, where the 10Y methodology sort of says, let's hold on cash flow. Let's just wait a minute on cash flow. Let's focus on taking your wealth and growing it exponentially. Then once you have a big bucket of money, essentially, then apply conservative cash flow to it, to which you can then have true freedom and autonomy, right? So let's build the nest egg first, then apply the cash flow versus taking small little bites out of it over time. So the methodology is really rooted in a couple of things. It's taking a very conservative asset class in multifamily real estate and something that has stability, which we can get into all the reasons as to why, but I think a lot of your listeners understand what those benefits are, and applying a safe exponential model to it. So if you look at the value phase of most ground up development or value add, it's really in those first 2 years, right? So the way most deals are structured, those first 2 years is where the value of the asset actually appreciates the greatest, whether, again, you're building it or you're improving it. Then it's typically, once it's there, then you hold it for cash flow. What we're saying is let's just execute those first 2 years. Whether, for us right now, our focus is ground up development, just because value add just isn't making a lot of sense at the moment. There's not a lot of great opportunity there. That could change, right? and let's double your money. Let's 2x your money for the LPs, limited partners in that 2-year period. Then take that capital and roll it to the next one. So if you come in with a $200,000 investment, in 2 years, that $200,000 investment is $400,000. Now that $400,000 becomes $800,000. $800,000 becomes 1.6. You continue to do that exponentiation. If you do it 5 times, the founder of Bala, which I know you'll likely have him on the show. This is a methodology that him and his wife put into play many years ago, and over the course of 10 years, he was able to 32x or 32 times his initial investment. So, $400,000 became $12.8 million, right? So rather than putting into something, having it just stay in there for cash flow, continue to double it up, right? And that's vanilla. That's an average deal in the real estate space. This is done all the time. 2x is not difficult. It's a little bit more challenging these days, right? It's a little bit more challenging, but with the right underwriting and the right focus on those particular metrics, it absolutely still can be done, especially in ground up development right now in the build to rent market. So, 2 to the power of 5, or if you just double your money 5 times over the course of 10 years, is 32 times your money. So now you're sitting on 12.8, call it 10, 12 million bucks. And then you apply a conservative, call it 5% cash on cash, whether it be a mix of real estate, treasury bonds, things like that, something that's conservative and safe. Now you're pulling in, $500,000 plus a year, which you can live comfortably on a nest egg that is pulling some conservative yields. So it was that small, when I heard that adjustment, first of all, I had not seen it. No one else was doing it. And I've seen a lot of stuff. A lot of real estate from a marketing perspective is focused on a deal. Like, hey, I got this deal with this IRR and this cash on cash, and that's great. But what most people want is a destination, and that's retirement. So if we can take that idea notion for most people, which is very fuzzy, like when can I retire? How much money do I need? What's my number? And we can quantify that and then show you a roadmap to get there. That's what allowed us on our first fund to be able to raise close to 20 million bucks in 4 weeks. In today's market is insane. That was really fast. Everyone thinks it has to do with, some whimsical marketing skills that I have. And while some of those, I do have a skill set, it came down to almost 100% messaging and the methodology, because that methodology is what people are super excited about with 10Y and what I'm excited about. And I know what you guys are excited about.
Totally. Yeah, we really enjoyed meeting Bala and just hearing his background, and we are going to have him on the show, but he's basically a tech entrepreneur, and that's how he started in Silicon Valley, and he made a boatload of money, but that's not really the important part. It's the connections of the people that he met, the real estate that he got into. He put this method into play for himself. It worked. And then using it, being able to bring other investors in to enjoy the fruits of this design that he created. Now, the most important part is the relationship that I felt like after meeting him. Is this person a good person? If he's close to you, we knew that he would be, and just that feeling that we got. And then also vetting out, like, for people that are listening, like, the best thing that you can do before getting into a real estate deal is talking to the players that are in the deal, like talking to the players that have dealt with these people in the past, the syndication lawyers, all of these people that make up the team that makes you feel confident about doing a deal. But the 10Y model for us, I had never heard it before, but it's really not something that's, I'm trying to phrase this the right way. It's not like this creating a new planet, right? It's just using something that's already been used and then condensing it. And also the ground up development helps you create a lot of equity right off the bat from what building costs are versus versus value add. So we really enjoyed it, and just learning more and more about it made us want to dive in.
Yeah, I think there's probably people listening too. Like, for when we originally heard about it, we were like, it sounds like it's not it sounds earth shattering, but when you break it down, it's really not. It's the way the picture is painted, like the 10 years to retirement. That is like, okay, I needed the roadmap, right? There's a lot of different deals out there that you see people get into, and hey, it's like, whenever we have a deal, come on, jump on in and we'll be good to go. But this one has a set milestones all the way up to the 10 years. And you can get out at certain milestones once each property, there's an exit option. So my question to you is, can you talk to people that are like, hey, listen, like, is this something that is completely brand new? And you're saying that no one else has done it. What has kind of allowed you guys the ability to jump from multiple property to multiple property and have this actual like framework that is proven and can actually be walked through? Because my vision is like, well, it comes down to the tech background from Bala, and he must have, sold his engineering too, right? But he also sold his business for a lot of money, and he's able to build the ground up development and scale moving forward. So I'm curious if that plays into it, and you can maybe talk to a little bit more of the nuances and like how this thing is actually churned out over time.
Yeah. So you bring up a good point about understanding the sponsor and the operator, when looking to invest in a deal or an opportunity. And, Bala is obviously the founder of the company. It was his thesis, his methodology that he deployed himself. Then he taught several people, and it worked for them as well, years ago, that they were brought upon the same financial freedom. And it was in that moment where he's like, hey, I want to kind of box this up, right? And I want to offer it to other people because we're onto something here. And while Bala has got this great experience building a massive tech company, exiting from it, he actually retired on real estate before he sold that tech company. So he didn't even need that, right? That was just like, just the cherry on top. But in those years, he'll tell you that he learned, a lot about scaling a business, because so he created an app, a company called Peel Technologies. It's basically this remote control that's inside of cell phones for like your TV, but like years ago, right? And he had to find a way to exponentially grow that business in order to make it into something that was profitable. So, as engineers, his wife's a mathematician. A lot of people, they're not even sure what exponentiation means, right? There's addition, there's multiplication. So addition is just adding one number to another, right? Multiplication is just taking two numbers and sort of doing that multiple times. Exponentiation is multiplying things multiple times, right? So that's where it starts to grow like a virus. And he had over the years learned how to scale a business and how to focus on exponentiation, and then applied it to his real estate. And so one of the things I think makes Bala really, really good at what he does is his ability to create an incredible team. And the people that he's put on this team, the people that he's recruited it's unbelievable, actually. To take a company that really is, it's relatively new. The belief that everyone has in Bala and this thesis from people that are ballers in this industry, right? People that understand this space, people that have been doing it for a long time. They're like, that is brilliant. Just is a testament to the simplicity and the brilliance behind the methodology. And this will for sure be replicated. But what makes it work is a whole nother ballgame, right? So how do you take and continue to multiply people's money and be able to have a place to put that money as it grows like a monster? Because you can imagine, if I take the fund that we're just launching now, it's a $30 million fund, right? So $30 million times 32x, like you got to turn your phone sideways to fit the number of zeros that's on the phone, right? So it's a big ask. So really what makes that happen is planning. So we talked about that earlier about, in the entrepreneurial discussions about thinking about the end in mind and working your way backwards. That's something that Bala does really, really well. It's something that I've done really well, and other people on the team do really well. It's understand, okay, this is where we want to go. How are we going to have to do this? And it's the amount of legwork we're doing at entitling land and entitling dirt and creating deals in the pipeline that are years out to be able to receive the capital that's going to come from the sales of these properties as we build them. So creating a great team that can execute a very simple plan flawlessly, the attention to detail that goes into that, and the amount of pre-planning that goes into that, all those things collectively is really what's making 10Y hum right now. But if I was to sort of put, kind of a knife in the board on one thing, like in the map, and say, what's the big anchor of this? It's the people, and the people is what's going to drive this methodology and the belief that we all have in Bala and in this system. So that's really what the anchor is for this.
That's what
in
I'm
my
looking for.
opinion.
Yeah, totally. And just to give people an idea, candidly, like I feel so blessed to have been able to build a podcast, to lead me into a room, to talk to X person that leads me to Y person, that we needed a website. We talked to Derek and led me to our conversation. And I really do think everything happens for a reason. But the reason that I bring that up is because I feel like there's kind of these like pivotal like moments in your life that you don't really know. Maybe you know they happen, maybe you don't know, but like I felt like there's opportunity that comes your way and it comes knocking, and you kind of just, you have a feeling about it. Like, for example, just meeting Bala, I thought, I've never, it's rare that I have a conversation with somebody that's as intelligent as this gentleman. Like I truly felt that. I was like, I don't know. I like to consider myself like,
you're decently smart, dude.
Decently smart, right? Like above average. I don't even know. I think like average, right? But like
subpar.
But like the ability.
I'm just kidding. Sorry.
But the ability to like talk to people every single week, we bring in people that are smarter than us. Like that is the goal. Like to get in the room. So I felt like just being on the Zoom and being in this virtual room with somebody who's done the things that he's done, I felt like, I need to do whatever I can to try to bring value so that our relationship can flourish. And that's kind of a side note, but I think that just for people listening, it doesn't have to be this opportunity, but like you'll know it when an opportunity comes your way that it's I'm in a different sphere right now. Like I'm playing in a ball game that I have not been able to enter up until this point. And that's kind of the feeling that I got going into it, which is why we're super excited to have this partnership.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. Speaking of pivotal moments, I don't want to glaze over this, and Corey and I know this about you, but I think it's important for listeners to know, like, you've overcome some pretty big adversity in your life, and everybody likes a story. You talked about all the Ironmans, you talked about overcoming business hurdles with bad partners, etc. Can you talk about your biggest life hurdle or one of them? I think you know what I'm alluding to. If you're comfortable sharing it, and just kind of like how that shaped you into the person you are today.
Yeah, so I think the listeners have, up to this point, they've obviously heard, one of the life hurdles for me, which was kind of going through that moment where I really realized I needed to change a lot of things in my life, and that was a conscious decision that I made out of a gut feeling. And sometimes we make those changes, and we make those decisions at a time where it's necessary. And sometimes change is just thrown upon us and we have no choice, right? I get hit by a bus tomorrow and I can't walk anymore. Like, okay, I need to figure out how to use a wheelchair. Right? That's an example, a very, stark example of what that could look like. And that's why, again, I keep preaching to people, like, and I think a lot of people listening to this have heard this before, but like, put yourself in challenging situations on purpose, because it's going to prepare you for when life's going to throw you a curveball, right? We live in this world of abundance and Amazon now, and everything's at an app and a click, and it's turning us into weak people. So we got to do some stuff that's hard. And that's what I liked about Ironman and all that stuff. But it's interesting. I trained for Ironman for years. I did for about 12 years, competed internationally. I did over 100 races, and I loved it. It was a big part of my life. And it was something that I think was also using to fill that gap right here, right? I had this feeling of constantly achieving. That was like kind of this gap I had to feel, because I was like never satisfied. And back in 2019, right after I got back from this around the world honeymoon with my wife, we went on this cruise. And when I went to get on the boat, all of a sudden I had this pain in my neck, and I was like, oh, what did I do? I sleep on my pillow funny or something? Like, what's up? So right before I got on the boat, I was down on the floor. I called my buddy, he's in the travel space as well, and he's like, yeah, I got a chiropractor. Go see a chiropractor. That'll be good for you. So I went to chiropractor, and the chiropractor he later told me was an alcoholic, because when I got there, I could smell the booze on this chick's breath as she's like just torquing on my neck at like 6 o'clock at night, because I had to go get on a cruise ship the next day. So the next day I was all beat up, not because I think chiropractic care is bad, but I just think chiropractic care from somebody who's intoxicated is probably not a good thing. So I get on the boat and I'm feeling this soreness, I'm feeling this stiffness. And so I pop a couple Advil, right? And then I continue to do that through the course of the trip. And whenever I come off the Advil, I would find the pain had now matriculated to a different part in my body. I thought to myself, like, what's going on? So over the course of month 1, month 3, month 6. And over the course of a year, this pain went from being in the middle of my neck to into my shoulders, into the middle of my back. All of a sudden, when I go out and go for a run, again, I was an Ironman athlete. I was going racing 140.6 miles. My knees felt heavy. I felt like I had cement shoes on. All of a sudden, I was having like this pain in my shoulders to where it would get frozen, it would get caught, and it would get stuck. And all of a sudden, I lost mobility in my other shoulder. And soon, probably about 6 months in, I had to go every 2 weeks to have fluid drained from my knees because I couldn't bend my knees. I couldn't even bend my knees to put my shoes on. I couldn't wash my hair in the shower because my shoulders were so jacked up. And it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And I was like, what is going on? What keeps happening? But as long as I took Advil and I was popping those things like Tic Tacs, it would mask the pain for however long that, the NSAID would do that. And it started to become a problem. What I didn't realize, it was actually making the problem worse. Right. So I started going to doctors, and the knee doctor said, yeah, you need knee surgery. You have a torn meniscus. The shoulder doctor said, yeah, you've got a torn supraspinatus muscle. We need to operate. And so I went to rheumatoid arthritis doctors because it got to the point, guys, where I couldn't walk. Like I literally would crawl to the bathroom in the middle of the night unless I had crutches by the bed. And many nights I would crawl, or I would take my foot and like, if this is my toes and my heel, and I just sort of like shuffle because I couldn't actually put pressure on one leg or the other. And one day it would be one hip, and the next day it would shift to the other hip. And I kept going to a chiropractor, and he's like, I don't understand what's going on with you. He's like, this doesn't make any sense. And the doctors were trying to throw pills and needles at me and all of these things. And I kept saying, like, I don't want to take that stuff. Like, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole because I see other people, once they commit to that, they're done. So I started to lose weight. I went from 185 pound guy to 150 pounds. I couldn't do a single push-up. I could wash my own hair. I couldn't walk. I would cry just in the middle of the night because I identified as this like Ironman athlete. Now I need crutches to go take a leak in the middle of the night. So you can imagine, those who are listening, like, that really sucked. That was a huge degradation. My wife was like, who did I marry? Like, this guy's just whittling away into a noodle. And it wasn't until I met this guy by the name of Dr. Ben Lerner, who turns out he's also a chiropractor. And we were working on somewhat of a business venture together. And I brought up what was going on to him. He's like, you know what? He's like, that doesn't make sense. We're just all of a sudden, everything in your body is a problem. He goes, it's something systemic. So we need to look at your gut because I think it might be what you're eating. That's what makes sense. So I was like, my gut doesn't bother me. I was like, I eat stuff. I don't have gas or bloating or any of this other stuff. He goes, no, that's not it. He's like, just do me a favor. He's like, go do a microbiome study in this food sensitivity test. So the results come back, and it was just like this aha moment. He's like, your gut's blown out, dude. He goes, you have severe leaky gut. I had full-blown autoimmune where my liver enzymes were out of whack. My CRP and D was up. Like my vitamin D was like, everything was really bad. I was presenting with somebody who has full-blown autoimmune disease. And he's like, I think it's your food. As a triathlete, I ate a ton of carbs, a ton of sugar, a ton of dairy. I could eat anything I wanted because some days when I was training, I was consuming 7, 8, 9,000 calories after some of these workouts. You can't eat clean, or I mean, you can, but most people wouldn't. I was eating ice cream, Twizzlers, Fig Newtons, anything I could nail in, and I would just stay shredded and lean, and I would burn it all off. But when I stopped competing, I still kind of ate like that, and I still stayed lean because I still worked out. But then, I didn't realize, while I looked good on the outside, on the inside, I was dying. And it was real hard. But then I made a decision. I said, you know what? I'm going to go on a 5-day fast. I'm not going to eat anything. I'm going to do one of these fasts I keep reading about, or, Joe Rogan's talking about, or whatever. And sure enough, 5 days later, all of a sudden, I could walk. My knees didn't need to be drained. My shoulder felt better. I was like, I might be onto something here. So I cut out all sugar, all gluten, all dairy from my life, and I've not put it back. This is several years ago. And I went ahead and I cut every single toxin out of my life, from the shampoo that I use to the deodorant to the toothpaste. I put olive oil on my face for lotion. I filter my air. I filter my water. I went absolutely nuts with every environmental toxin, I mean, a dishwasher, detergent, anything you can imagine, I cut it out of my life because I knew if I took that all off the table, my body would heal. And I didn't have that aha moment. Right? I was forced to make that change. I could have taken the easy route. I could have hit the easy button, taken the pill, taken whatever cortisone shots, whatever they wanted to give me. But I was like, I wasn't get out of my body's way and just let it heal. And miraculously, over the course of now, listen, it took me like 40 some odd years to screw this body up. So it took about 6 months to unscrew it, and it happened. It was a miracle. Honestly, all of a sudden, I started gaining weight back, strength back. I started running again. I started putting the weight back on, and at 47, I feel better than I have in my entire life. Nothing hurts in my body, zero, not a thing. And so I live today. I'm the weird guy. I'm like the weird dude you go out to dinner with, and I'm asking the chef to come out and tell me what kind of oils they cook their food in because I won't touch it. It's just not worth it to me. I won't eat because I realize, and there's a whole nother podcast all into itself about, the pharmaceutical industry, the food industry, and all that stuff, how it's really not doing a good job or helping any of us today. But it's for that, I started Adapt Health with Dr. Ben Lerner, the guy that healed me, decided to start a business together to try to spread the message to others that you can heal yourself if done the right way. But most people don't have the patience and that delayed gratification, just like investing, right? They don't want to wait for that money to grow. They don't want to wait for their body to heal. So that art of delayed gratification is something that I learned and was reinforced with this whole health journey. But I'm grateful to be able to share that story with people. I hope it makes an impact with somebody.
Yeah. Well, Derek, two things to take away here. I think one, another reason why we wanted to go into business with you was learning about your perseverance through adversity. If you're willing to change everything about your life, that's a hell of a lot harder than trying to make an investment work or trying to make a website flourish. It's that dedication that you put behind taking care of yourself. And then the second part is more nuanced, and this could be a whole podcast in itself, but I firmly believe that there's a lot of problems that can be solved with what people are putting in their body. In fact, you're living proof of it. And we don't have to get in that conversation now, but my life has changed significantly by cutting out certain things. And then I haven't even done it to anywhere near an extreme that you have, but I'm noticing it more as I get older, and I think that's maybe just the wear and tear of what you do to your body, alcohol, caffeine, this, that, the third, it has changed me. And I've noticed parts of myself and I'm like, why? I'm anxious for a reason, and I'm not going to go take some sort of pill that's going to try to fix this problem. It's something else, an external factor. And diving into that and figuring it out has been a challenge, but it's also been rewarding to know that you're in control of it. And I think a lot more people are in control. I'm watching this documentary. It's not really a documentary, but it's on Netflix called Painkiller. And I don't know if you know about it, but it's the Sackler family.
No, I'm gonna check it out. Oh, I saw another Sackler one, Dope Sick, which is another good Sackler family movie. Yeah, I'll check that out.
Yeah, this family, that family. Oh my God,
they're criminals. Yeah,
literally.
Awful.
But the whole point is it's the opioid crisis, right? And them putting a product to market to help people with pain, which is actually killing people. So regardless, it's a tangent. But it's remarkable what you've done. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. So I know that was a bit of a tangent. I don't want to take up another hour of your time, Derek, but I truly appreciate it. I think it's remarkable what you've been able to overcome. And I think it was important to bring up, you were going from 140 miles training, right, to literally zero, not being able to walk, and being an Ironman we were glazing over that. You need to be in insane shape to do that. So people, if you don't know what an Ironman is, go look it up. I see a lot of these guys actually with the tattoos. If there's a specific logo to it, I see them all the time, and I'm like,
it's on my calf. It's on my calf. If I could get my leg up here, I'd show you, but I'd probably pull a hammy.
It's so funny. It must be part of the it's culture, the brotherhood, the tribe. Yeah, because I've definitely seen it on a couple other gentlemen that I know have done. So it's badass. But Derek, for people that enjoyed the show, they want to get to know you a little bit more, maybe network, maybe take advantage of some of your services on the marketing side. How can people get in touch?
Yeah. So if they want to get in touch on the marketing side, just go to adaptmediaagency.com. enterprises.com. Best place to get in contact with me there. You can, go ahead and drop some information in the contact form, book an appointment with me. Happy to help anybody out that's looking to, elevate the game. We focus on real estate capital raising space, but we do everything, right? So if you go to our website, just know we can market for anything. Those who want to get in contact, if they want to learn more about 10Y, they need to go to your website, actually. So they need to go to juice-enterprises.com / that's a little slashy thing, 10Y. And that's a number one, a number 0, and then Y, not the word TEN. So juice-enterprises.com / 10Y, because we're partnering on this opportunity. For those that listen to the podcast, and have built a relationship with you guys, we would love, to provide them with some of that information through the partnership that we're creating on your website.
Love it. This is perfect. I was going to say what you said, so thank you for saying it. We'd love to chat with people who are interested. It is truly a unique opportunity. We're excited to be able to share with you guys. Derek, thanks so much for coming on the show. This has been awesome. I love your story. Everything that you stand for seems so in alignment. We talked about alignment with us and what we're all about, just the health, the wealth, the all the things that are important.
The pursuit of happiness.
Exactly, all of it. So I just want to thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your story with our audience. I know this episode is going to hit home for people.
Awesome. Well, guys, I really appreciate the opportunity. You guys are, we were like brothers from day one. The first time we met, I knew that, we had a lot in common. So shoot, man, we could keep this podcast rolling for 4 or 5 hours and discuss a lot of things. So I do appreciate the time that you give me today and a chance to talk to your crew.
Absolutely. Thanks again.
Thanks for tuning in this week to the Weekly Juice Podcast. If you liked what you heard, please leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, subscribe, and share with friends. The more ratings we get, the more ears we'll get on our show, and in turn, we'll be able to provide you with more high-quality guests. You can also find us on Instagram at Weekly Juice Pod, where we post daily tips and tricks and document our own journey towards financial freedom. Make sure to tune in every Wednesday to get your weekly juice.